Hello, welcome to 8.9 News. I'm ffinlo Costain. Barclays has said that around two-thirds of farmers have experienced the impact of climate change. In response, the bank has launched a discounted interest rate on its green loans for business in a bid to help farmers working to reduce emissions and boost biodiversity. I spoke to Adam White, Head of Agriculture at Barclays Business Banking, and I asked him what sort of impacts farmers are facing.
So, according to our arable customer research, greater weather variability and increased rainfall were identified as the most commonly felt effects. And I think certainly over the last few days and into the coming few days, we've certainly seen that. During the summer, we've seen hotter spells with increased rainfall prior to that. It's becoming more common for farmers, and that's certainly something that's come through in the research. Um, Almost half of our farmers, our arable farmers, consider the need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions as important, and 28% have already measured their on-farm GHG emissions. So they're starting to think about how do I measure and also start to mitigate some of those impacts of increased rainfall and weather variability.
A lot of those impacts that you mentioned seem to be framed around water. Either there's too much of it or there's too little. So in terms of climate impacts, are you thinking about ways that farmers might be able to manage that balance better?
Absolutely, and I think that's part of the wider discussion that we're starting to have with farmers now. I think very early on it was around emissions. Now we're moving into the mitigation conversation, which is how do you store water if you don't have enough of it, and how do you manage on a farm that perhaps hasn't had as much water? We've certainly seen that in East Anglia over the last couple of months, where farmers have had to change their sort of annual patterns to be able to get onto the soil properly. But it has also driven much more interest in regenerative practice, and particularly the practice of protecting soil. I think the weather has driven that conversation to the top of the agenda over the last couple of years.
Now, the nature crisis isn't just about the climate, but biodiversity too. Are you aware of direct impacts on farmers from biodiversity loss?
Yeah, absolutely, and farmers are very, very conscious of this. One of the quotes I heard at a conference recently was that being a farmer means shaking hands with nature, and certainly the farmers that I talk to and spend time with want to be stewards for their land, and that means ensuring that wildlife and ecosystems can continue to thrive. And very often farmers will take me outside and say, listen to all the birds, how amazing is that we're bringing them into the fields through the practice that we're undertaking. Biodiversity loss obviously has lots and lots of impacts on those farms. So it's not just the joy of having nature in your garden, but it's making farms more vulnerable to things like pests and pathogens, and particular crop failure through loss of pollinators. So there definitely is a desire among farmers to both reduce emissions and promote biodiversity. And our research showed that 83% of farmers consider that improving nature and biodiversity is important for the future of their farms. So at this point, biodiversity actually is taking a precedence over reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
And ultimately, this is about planning for resilience, isn't it? And in terms of the green loans for business, what sort of activities are they intended for?
So the key things that we would look at, and the key things that farmers are talking to us about can range from things like green assets, so solar panels, electric vehicles, heat pumps, um, to look at how do I reduce the emissions from my electricity supply. But then it also leads into new agri technologies. So some of the conversations we've had about direct drills, how do you bring those onto your farm? What's the equipment that you need to become regenerative? But there are also an emerging range of new agricultural technologies that farmers are talking to us about that can help their farm become both more efficient, but also help in terms of reducing their greenhouse gas emissions.
We're here today talking about this because Barclays has decided to discount the interest rate on the green loans for business. Why has Barclays chosen to do that for farmers?
So doing that is part of our commitment to financing the transition, and we've been very vocal around our goals in doing that, particularly for all businesses across the UK, small and medium enterprises. We undertook some roundtables with a range of our farming clients to understand what would be most useful to them, and loan interest rates came out as the most preferred option. And we're passionate about being a data-led business and asking the question before we implement something. So it's something that came from our farmers directly. Um, In our survey, the cost of the required machinery and equipment was identified by 45% of our arable agricultural customers as among the biggest challenges in progressing to net zero. So we can help hopefully unlock some of that cost through lower cost financing, but we've also done it in a way that farmers have told us would work best for their business.
When Barclays makes a loan decision, that judgment will presumably be based on the level of risk associated with that loan, that investment for the bank. Is that decision based on physical assets that can act as security, or market volatility, or just the viability of a farmer's business plan?
So the key decision for us, and it will be the same for all lenders, is affordability. We understand the volatility of the agricultural markets, and we always take a long-term view of that. Barclays has been working with agricultural businesses for over 275 years, so that's not something that's unique to the current time that we're in. So understanding a farm's business plan is vital to the process, and that plan will always be unique to that particular farm's land, the challenges that they have, the sector that they're in, the performance of that sector, where the opportunities are. So key for us is working with our team of agricultural relationship managers, because they're experts. They can understand how the benefits of what that client is looking to invest in can be realised, and that's really core to everything that we do, is having those people on the ground, those people who understand the sector inside out, that can really understand how that will help in terms of profitability, but also environmental sustainability.
One of the criticisms towards banks from NGOs in particular, but also some farmers, has been that banks' knowledge and lending models are still constrained by an understanding of mainstream agriculture that's been built up over the last 40 or 50 years. Do you think that there is a genuine change taking place across the banking sector to better understand the needs of innovators within the regenerative and agroecological farming sector?
Absolutely. I about 18 months ago, I was at an event, and somebody said to me, somebody from within the agricultural industry said, a lot of farmers that we're talking to are concerned about talking to their banks about regenerative agriculture, because they think it's new, it's different. You don't perhaps understand it. It's going to have an impact on land values. It's going to have an impact on profitability. And I was shocked, because we absolutely wanted to be having those conversations and understanding those. So over the last 2 years, we've done a huge amount of training and upskilling with our client, with our relationship managers, to really get them to understand what are the core principles, what are the things that farmers would be looking to do differently. We've showcased a couple of examples of farmers from both the dairy sector and from the poultry sector, and also the arable sector, who have gone on this journey, and some of the experiences that they've had. Particularly being pioneers, you tend to learn all of the mistakes first. So they've been fantastic. But one of the things that we've done last year, and we continue to roll out, is a series of farm to farm events, where we get a small group of 20 farmers, the local team of relationship managers along, and we actually go and see what a farmer's done in terms of changing towards regenerative and other agroecological processes on their farm, to showcase it. So it becomes a safe space to have a conversation about what did you do, what went wrong, what went well, would you have done it again, what would you have done differently. And that's great learning for everybody. So we really want to be standing next to our customers as we're going on that journey, because they'll be going through it at the same time.
One of the challenges, of course, for smaller regenerative and agroecological farmers, especially if they're renting, is that they often don't have buildings and machinery to offer as collateral. Are the Barclays green loans for business appropriate for these sorts of farmers?
So they would be eligible for the green loans for business. We are continually reviewing our product offering, and that's really important, given that every farm business is different in their approach. So a tenant farmer will have a different set of challenges from a landowner or a farmer operator. So we continue to work with our farmers to understand what their unique challenges are on farm, and how our offering can best support them. And that's something we're really proud of. We can be very flexible in terms of our offering and how it works for a particular farm. So in October, we have 2 farmer roundtables to have exactly that discussion. So teasing out some of the problem statements and the potential solutions that Barclays can put forward for both tenant farmers and landowners.
Earlier on, you mentioned affordability, and presumably whether it's a landowning farmer or a tenant farmer, the crux of the bank's decision will be based on the viability of that farmer's business plan and their ability to repay a loan.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I very often see tenant farmers that, because they don't have that luxury of the land available as security, they are very, very efficient. So profitability is key, and there are lots and lots of ways that we work with tenant farmers to support them.
Farming is undertaking a large-scale transition, which means that there's a great deal of innovation taking place at all levels in the sector. Are you excited to see that?
Absolutely. We Barclays have a unique position in the market, really. We're a universal bank, so we have the power to convene all parts of the supply chain and understand the challenges in the financing solutions to overcome the challenges for each part. So retailers will have different challenges to farmers, and really understanding how those all come together and start to create a solution that works for everybody. One of our key focuses has been inspiring take up of regenerative practice for farmers. So the looking across the board, one of the challenges that we do still have is that farmers are concerned about taking up regenerative practice. What does it mean? There's lots of myths in the sector. So is it is it something where you lose profitability for 5 years, and you really have to work out how you're going to cover those potential shortfalls? So helping farmers to really understand it, and I go back to our farm to farm events. That's where we can really showcase how farmers can go on that journey, and how we can support them.
That was Adam White from Barclays Business Banking. More news as ever on our website 8.9.com. That's all for now. We're back soon. Thanks for watching.